Okay, with mostly dry glue, I think we can go on to the next step here. Now, while I've been waiting for the paint to dry, I've also been having the glue gun heat up. So we now have a glue gun, and I'm going to put a bunch of glue down in here, and then before it solidifies, I'm going to start planting my bulrushes in it. Now you got to be careful when you're putting these in that you're not pushing down too far, because we don't want them to actually go through the aluminum foil at the bottom. So I'm going to add some more glue here. Okay, and there's our dozen bulrushes at the edge of the lake. Now, while that glue is still moist, I want you to add a few, you can see what I'm doing here, add a few rocks into that wet glue. Okay, it's already drying. Okay, I'm going to drizzle a little bit more glue around to add a few more of the larger rocks. I mean, I don't know about your Canadian lakes, but every one I've ever been in has got a rocky bottom. And because we want to get the impression of a canoe bed here, now you notice inside, oh, sticky. Oh, I hate glue guns. Okay, now back to the tacky glue. This time I'm going to put a little bit of tacky glue into my container here. And using my glue spreader, I'm just going to dab a little bit of it around on the edges of the lake here. Now, you don't have to worry about getting too far up the, oh dear, I'm getting more stuff around, too far up onto the flat surface, because we just want enough for the okay, so I've already managed to spill some of it, so let's just brush it over and into our gravel. I've got some more here, so I'm just going to sprinkle it. You might need to straighten out your bulrushes as they're okay. Now we've got a bit of a gravel beach here. Okay, put that to one side. Don't worry about having loose pieces in the bottom, because when you pour your resin, it will pretty well cover it up. Okay, so now is that starting to look like a beach? Yes, sort of. Once we get rid of all the strings of crap here. Okay, I'm going to undo my glue gun for the time being, although we may use it later, at a later point, to create some waves and things. Okay, now, excuse me, I'm going to take a little bit of the blue paint, I'm just going to touch bits and places of this. I'm using the brown to kind of mix the blue into it. Because what we're going to aim for, the effect we're going to aim for, is a little bit of the, oh dear, get some of the green paint loose here. Oh, and that's what happens when you don't shake your paint. Okay, let's try that again. See if we got green paint here. Now, this is one of those things where beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so you can dab and muck around as much as you want until you see what the bottom of your lake looks like. Okay, and that looks pretty good to me. So, next step. Ooh, that cough. We are going to take, we're going to mix up our resin, and I'm just going to let that dry for a minute, so I will be back shortly. Okay, we're back. This is more or less dry, and now we have our canoe that we finished earlier. So, I want you to start out by, you're going to need something. If you're doing this in a class with me as opposed to by yourself, the resin will be mixed for you, okay? But I'm going to show you how it actually works. I want you to take a popsicle stick or something and press the aluminum foil edges back against the Lego. Now, as I said, there is going to be wooden edging all the way, or all four sides of this, to hold the lid in place, the plexiglass lid. So, when we are finished, when this is all dried, we'll be taking the aluminum foil off. It doesn't matter if the edges are a little rough, because they will be covered by wood. But still, we don't want huge gaps between the edge of the poured lake and the edge of the box. So, as I said, this is called Easy Cast Clear Casting Epoxy, okay? Ideal for small casts. Well, this is definitely a small cast. As you can see, it's just that corner there. This particular resin requires equal amounts of the resin and the hardener. Okay. I'm going to mix it in this plastic glass, which is actually too big for my purposes. So what I'm going to do is just take a pair of scissors and just make that smaller. Okay, so we will start with the resin, and I'm going to use this smaller shot glass as a measuring tool. So I'm going to measure 1 measure of resin. Okay, put the lid back on so that I don't end up with resin all over my work surface. Now we'll let that sit for a minute. Nothing much will happen until you get the two together, and then it will start to harden. And then we're going to have 1 measure of hardener. And then while that is dripping, I'll just put the lid back on there. Okay. Now, we are going to stir this together, making sure it's well mixed. Because if it's not well mixed, it won't harden. So, we're going to do this for some time to make sure that it's really well mixed. And you'll see it gets, well, I don't know if you can see, but it does get some air into it, and it gets some bubbles. Now, I wouldn't worry about bubbles if I were you, because, I mean, in a pond or a lake, you're going to get bubbles, right? So we'll just, oh, I've got mayo. We'll just mix this together. You know, before I started this whole process, I really should have read the instructions. Okay, it says here we mix together for 2 stages using the stir stick to scrape the sides and bottom. Occasionally scrape this mixture from your stir stick back into the solution. After 2 full minutes, pour it into a second container and do it again. Well, of course, being intelligent, I don't have a second container handy, but I will go and get a second container. Sorry about that. Okay, now we will just pour this into a second container. You ever notice that you never read the instructions until after it's almost too late? I wouldn't normally have a gap like that in the middle of a video as I went to get something I was missing, but under the circumstances, I think you will understand. Now we mix it again. Now, I'm just assuming that 1 measure of each is going to be enough for this. I don't know. You know how deep this is. It's not very deep. Okay, let's pretend that that is 2 minutes. And we're going to pour this into place. And please don't overflow. I don't know if you can see, but this corner here is trying really hard to overflow. Okay. Now it looks kind of bubbly and funny, just like a lake might look. So now we're going to take this stick and, oh, that's interesting. We've got a rock actually sticking out of the lake. That's all right. That's good, because that's where our canoe is going to rest. Now you can fiddle with the placement of your canoe until you're happy with it, but make sure that it's sitting level. There, that looks pretty good. And I broke my own rule of making sure we're not more than 1/4 of an inch close to the center. So I've had to move my canoe out a little bit, you see, because the plexiglass cover is going to come down and sit between the edge of the canoe and there. Now don't be concerned, the end of the canoe is actually up a little bit off the ground, but don't worry about that because we'll fix it up with some landscaping afterwards. Now those little bubbles are actually looking a bit like pond scum, which is not bad. Okay, so that turned out to be just the right amount of pouring. And now we can go on to the next step, which is going to be starting to construct some of the buildings. So we'll go on to the next step.